Well, welcome to our podcast. We are back. My name is Dean Nixon. This is Kate Simmons, the lovely Kate Simmons.
Hello, everybody.
We are so excited to get our podcast up and going, and as we are having other topics come on board, the one topic that we really wanted to talk about today is...
You looked at me.
Yeah. Why am I not happy?
Why am I not happy? And I told Dean, I said, I'm feeling pretty targeted by this because for the last few days, I've just been struggling.
And it's true. Like I've watched yesterday, Kate comes in and she's all dressed in black, but not like gothic.
Right,
just snappy, sharp looking black. But it's like, man, that was the mood. That poor girl. I was like, are you okay? But the topic of why am I not happy has nothing to do with that, by the way. But it is a topic I want to talk about because keeping in alignment with our theme here of talking about the misconceptions of the mind. And that's the part where we really struggle with is this concept of why am I not happy, almost as if there's an expectation that you should be happy all the time.
Right. I could not agree with you more, Dean, and especially not only just looking at the mind piece that we are really going to dive into in our podcast series, but also the snake oil that we've been sold via the media, the news, the everything, right? That if you're not feeling like, I don't know, unicorns and Skittles and all of those beautiful things, then...
Rainbows.
Then, oh my gosh, take a look at your life because something is very off.
Well, and I love that you bring that up because it really couples with the issue that we have. So, a lot of times people are asking us all the time. They're like, oh, I'm not happy. Why am I not happy? I'm really unhappy. The key here is it's coupled with the belief of what's wrong with me.
Right.
And so a lot of times people are constantly in this vein of why am I not happy? What's wrong with me? Why am I not happy? What's wrong with me? And then, like you said, there's all these external cues that we're keying into, I should say. And we're like focused on them, trying to think, well, Joe over there, he seems to be happy. His life seems, they're
keyword seems, right, Dean?
Seems to be.
Seems to be. It's in my observation, that person is always happy. They have everything that I want. Why wouldn't they be happy? And why?
And so they seem to be. They're on Facebook. They're posting. Yes. They're going on vacations. Their family is smiling.
How are they always in Hawaii?
Why are they always on vacation? And how are they able to do this? And these misconceptions, I think there's these misconceptions that we get caught up in and these belief systems about who we are based upon the ideals of what other people are doing and who other people are. And this is really the root of our big issue, and this is the root of why our podcast is so critical at this time in our lives, because there are so many of us out there that are suffering from this why am I not happy plague. And this it's dousing the world with it. And so what winds up happening is we're starting to have all sorts of these social issues and these emotional issues and personal issues, and we're seeing them play out in the world because of the misconception that my life is not as good as everybody else's. And we need to explore, where did that come from? Why are we here?
Absolutely. And I think another layer that makes that super interesting, Dean, is when we think, this is going to make me happy, right? That idea of I'll be happy when, that arrival point, and then we get there and we're not happy. So that even almost compounds that of like, well, geez, now I have the beautiful house with the white picket fence and I'm not happy. So it's just like this never-ending scavenger hunt of trying to find the happiness cure that I don't know if it really even exists.
Well, it does.
Well, happiness exists, but I don't know if there's an arrival piece of it, ta-da, now I will forever until the end of days be happy.
And I love that you put it, the happiness, or the happiness cure. And And it is so funny that we use these terms every day, because the sense of cure is really, it infers that we're ill.
Right. Yes.
It infers that we're ill. And the I'll be happy when infers that we're suffering. And that seems to be one of the biggest issues that we have in our world, is we are constantly focused on the suffering rather than the experiencing of life.
Yes, absolutely. And I think maybe that's where kind of the mind twist comes in for it, is the fact that we think that we're here on this planet just in the pursuit of happiness, right? Like on the treadmill, like a hamster, just chasing happiness. And that's really not the focus, or I guess focus is the wrong word, but the meaning of our existence. Our existence, the meaning behind it, is to experience. Right?
Yes.
To be here, be human, and experience it all. And newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, that equals the lowest of the lows as well as the highest of the highs. So you're going to get it all. You're not just only going to be reveling as much to my chagrin. I'm gonna like just throw that out there. Much to my dismay, it's not always poolside with your favorite beverage in hand, just soaking in the rays of happiness and sunshine, right?
Right.
That quite honestly, Dean, do you watch The Good Place? Have you seen that at all?
I have worked to like it. It's got some of my favorite actors in there. I love it. I love Ted Danson, and I love Kristen Bell.
Yes.
And I love those people, but sometimes I'm like,
Okay, so this may be a little bit of a spoiler. It's definitely not going to ruin the story for you, but they eventually arrive in the good place. And everyone is bored out of their mind. They have no purpose. There's no growth or expansion. It's just this perfect place where everything that they could ever want is magically handed to them, right? In the afterlife. That's the whole purpose behind, or premise behind the show. And I think that is very, very true. Like if we just laid by the pool with our favorite beverage in our hand all day, every day, we would be miserable. We would not be happy. We would be happy for a week. I mean, that's called vacation, right? And then you come home. But I do think that there's that kind of, and it's kind of a mind bender, like to try to wrap your brain around, okay, wait, time out. I'm not only always supposed to be happy.
Yes.
I'm supposed to be able to, I'm supposed to like just revel in the breadth of this experience that we call humanity.
Yeah. And the part that's concerning is that we are so fixated on the avoidance of discomfort that we're constantly in a state, and this is the part that's so important for the listeners to really capture, is we are consistently in a state of suffering. And the suffering comes from the belief that, number one, I'm not happy. And the other belief comes from the belief that there's some relief out there to the suffering. And because of those two beliefs, I am suffering and there's a relief to the suffering, I suffer. And it's always been intriguing to me, especially like with physical pain. And there are individuals, there are those of us that have the ability, and I'm not proclaiming to be one, but just when I say us, I mean humanity.
Right.
There are those of us that have the ability to really not feel pain. And I remember listening to one of my books that I loved, and I'm trying to remember the name of it off the top of my head. I cannot think of it. Let me see if I can find my phone. I don't know where I put it.
Oh, is it in your pocket? Oh,
no.
It's behind you.
Oh, is it behind me? So I'm listening to this individual, and he's talking. It was really profound to me. Because what he was talking about was he had found this ability to really control pain, and not only control pain, but to accept pain. And that was really astonishing to me when I thought about that concept of it was inner engineering by Shaguru. I'm going to slaughter this. I'm going to let you read it.
Oh, so maybe I can slaughter it?
Well, you've got the media background. Maybe you can.
Sajuru Jagi Vasudev.
Yes.
Vasudev. Vasudev.
And he's a yogi, But the point is he was talking about being in a motorcycle accident, and he's talking about this big gash that he gets into on his leg, and he had to have it taken care of because he had to keep going. And so the surgeon or the doctor was going to repair, and it was very deep, so he had internal sutures and external sutures, and so they were like, well, we can't do anything because we have to wait to put you under, so you're gonna have to wait till tomorrow. He's like, nah, I can't, I gotta go. And so he really just essentially forced the issue, and he had the surgery, and the doctor was just really astounded by the fact that he could take this physical pain. And so his response to the doctor was that pain is just an experience. And I remember when he said that, in his book, pain is just an experience. It was very profound to me and really resonated deeply with me that pain is just an experience. And how we choose to experience that pain is very, very telling about the way that we approach life, the way that we embrace life, the way that we move through life. And as we look at pain in our lives, there are those of us that work very, very hard and make huge concerted efforts to avoid pain.
At all costs.
At all costs. And
even when it causes us more pain, ironically. Right?
Even though it's prolonging and pushing the pain out there longer, going into the dentist, getting numbed up, getting a cavity filled versus, putting it off, avoiding, wow, root canal, whoa, nope, extraction. So we get to that point where we know that the more that we avoid the discomfort, the more that we avoid the pain and discomfort, the more that we are going to prolong facing it.
Absolutely.
But what I appreciated about what he said was pain is an experience. So if we couple that with why am I not happy, and the belief that I'm not happy because I'm suffering and that there's relief out there to my suffering, now we start to recognize there's a bigger picture here. Thus, the whole reason we're podcasting is we have got to get past these misconceptions of the mind.
Absolutely. And while you're bringing this up, Dean, I'm right in the middle of a book that you recommended I read, which is called Existential Kink. I cannot remember the author.
Oh, I'm going to pull it up right now.
So you can grab that author. Shout out to all the authors out there that just enrich our lives.
Carolyn Elliott
is who wrote Existential Kink. And I'm in the middle of it, and I'm really enjoying it. It's a book about embracing the dark sides of you, your shadow self, right? And so those of us that really get into that whole enlightenment movement, right? The idea of the shadow and the ego and all of that stuff is not very new. But I really like her perspective on it, which is exactly what you're talking about. She talks in depth about how often that the line between pleasure and pain can be quite blurred. And I love that you were talking about in the book that you're working on how that pain is just an experience, right? And so so then in Existential Kink, the next layer to that would be that because that is an experience, you can also kind of morbidly twist it into it being pleasure, it being an experience that you're enjoying, even though I've got this gash in my leg. Yes,
and that's the premise of the book that I really appreciated. And like with all books, people, you're going to pick up some of the books that we're going to recommend, and you're going to be like, what? What are these people reading? Well, but here's the thing: is it's not a matter of what we're reading; it's a matter of the fact that we're reading, and we're getting this perspective shifts and changes. So everything that we read, I don't necessarily agree with 100%. Sure. But the part that I agreed with it wasn't so much that that it's like you're going to take this pain and turn it into pleasure. It's the forcing the issue of I derive some level of pleasure, or I wouldn't be doing it.
Right, exactly.
And that's the part that's so intriguing to me, like when you talk about the good place concept and these people that are in this, the good place, where everything's amazing.
They're in this state
everything's
of
amazing.
Perfection.
There's no more suffering. But then what do? They create drama, right? Because they love the drama. We love drama as human beings. So it's always funny to me. People always say, I just want to be peaceful. I just want to be happy. I just want to be content with my life. Oh, okay. So what do you want in your life? I want family. I want a spouse. And I want a good job. And I'm like, you realize that they are in total contrast to the first three things you said you wanted.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Because those three things are going to create chaos, and they are going to create drama, and they're going to create pain. Like, that's just the nature of those relationships.
Yes.
A little bit. I mean, there will be also joy and happiness and connection and all those things, right? But you're not going to be without. You're not just going to be like, oh,
peaceful
just
all
so
the
much
time.
Peace now.
And that's the interesting.
Have you met a 4-year-old?
Yes, actually, I have met 5 of them.
Or 2. My niece is 2 right now,
yes,
and she is.
I've met so many of them, and that's the point. Is that the minute we stop being this victim of why am I not happy, this victim of I'm suffering, there's relief to my suffering, when will I get the relief, this victim mentality that we get into, and then we start to embrace this accountability where we say, okay, at some point I'm creating these choices I'm making, and some of these things I want them in my life. I want, I'm a father. I want my children in my life. But in order to have my children in my life, I have to accept that they are going to be who they are. They're going to do the things they want to do. And not all of those things I'm going to like. And some of the things that they're going to choose to do and have chosen to do in their lives are not in alignment with my thinking. It's hurtful and painful to watch siblings fight and not get along and feel like you have to choose sides. There's so many of these things that cause discomfort, but yet I chose that.
Right.
So as a parent, when I'm like, oh my gosh, why can't I just have some peace and quiet? Well, because I chose to be a dad.
Yep, and that's part of the gig.
And that's kind of the existential kinks premise, is start embracing the fact that you, on some level, enjoy what you're experiencing.
Right.
And like one example that she used, now that you brought the book, I want to kind of flesh it out a little bit.
Do it.
Is she brought up the idea of the person that is continually struggling financially and having to consistently move back in with family or parents, etc. And so she's talking about this individual saying, on some level, what's really driving that? What is the feeling that they are craving that they're not getting, and they're out there creating? And she's proposed, well, maybe this individual, and this is a hypothetical proposal. Right. This is not representative of anybody out there in the world.
We're not talking about someone specifically.
We're not talking about you. Calm down. But it's this idea that she said, on some level, maybe this individual loves the feeling of being loved and being taken care of, and knowing that I can let go of life, I can let go of the challenges, I can let go of the drudgery, and somebody's always going to be there to save me, and that in and of itself feels good momentarily in a very unhealthy way. Right. Is her proposal.
Absolutely. And I love how she brings in kind of that subconscious part of it, right? So we as individuals, we aren't like, man, I really want to get into a super codependent relationship right now and experience all of these things. But our subconscious very well could be craving that, right? And so then we run into patterns of attracting the same type of individual into a relationship that is not healthy for us. And so until we realize, and part of the book is that we are creating some of that. Like, we are attracting that is, we have to take some accountability for that kind of creation, because we are creators, right? And so if you're constantly experiencing those kind of situations or reoccurring themes and feelings in your life, like, take a look at that, like, because you're creating it.
Right.
You have a very big part in everything that's going on in your life. And I think that is really, really powerful. And the part that I really like about the book is to not shame yourself for it. That's not be like, key. Okay, so now this is a super huge wrong thing for me, right? Like, I'm wrong, I'm bad, I keep doing this to myself. No. Embrace that. Figure out what pieces of you are craving what, like Dean was just saying, right? Like, if you wind up back at your parents' house often in a cyclical pattern, maybe your inner child is just like, man, I really want to be taken care of. I really want to feel nurtured. I want to feel like no matter what happens in my life, I have a really safe place to go back to, no matter what. And so then you create situations in your life to reinforce that for your subconscious, right?
Yep.
And that subconscious part of you
You're
is like, is like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. And then your conscious part of you is like, I am such a failure.
Yep.
Here I am living in my
head.
parents' basement again, right?
Yep.
So we have that duality inside of us, the one that we aren't always super aware of because it's called our subconscious, right? And so being able to...
We can control it, but we're not aware of it.
Exactly.
And we'll talk about that in future podcasts.
So to open up and embrace that and to really, in existential kink, it's to really like love it. Like, oh my gosh, I love the fact that I love being taken care of.
Right.
Giving yourself permission to feel all those things. Well, then, in theory, right, I'm still in the middle of the book. I haven't put any of this into practice. But like...
I finished it, so I'll help you.
Okay, but then the theory is that will help resolve that subconscious desire, and then you can really get to work in creating the things that consciously you really want. Like you can get your subconscious on board once it's been soothed and satisfied.
And create it create it in the path that you need rather than that's easy.
Right.
And I think that's the premise, and one of the takeaways. There's many takeaways to this book you'll find, but yes, one of the takeaways in that scenario, using that scenario for example, now I reckon if it's me and I've recognized, oh my gosh, I've been sabotaging myself because I just want to feel loved and cared about. And I have to stop depending upon external forces to create it. I'm going to create it internally. Mm-hmm. Now I'm moving forward as a human being. But I would never have gotten to that point with the shame layer.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the part that we need to really look at, is there's a shame layer that it's kind of like a blanket. So we've got this behavior, we've got this stuff that's going on underneath it that we judge and we deem as inappropriate or wrong or bad or all these different things. And so we've got this layer that's down there, and then we throw the shame blanket over the top of it, and then we ignore it. And so because we ignore it, we keep falling back into the, well, why am I not happy? Why do I keep falling for the same guy? Why do I keep losing my job? Why do I keep spending all my money? Why can't I get away from, the drugs, or get away from, this abusive relationship? It's because under that layer of shame is the truth. And because we throw the blanket of shame on it, we don't want to talk to anybody about it. I want to tell you, oh my God, I want to tell you that
I don't even want to look at it, let alone talk to somebody else about it.
Yeah. I mean, I want to tell you I struggle with staying employed. I want to tell you I struggle with food. I want, and so we throw it, and then it never grows, and we never grow past it or grow out of it. So it really is a good book.
Yeah. It's definitely, I'm just going to put this out there, just letting reality fly. She's absolutely leaned hard into the idea that sex sells. So there's kind of a very, sexual subtext that happens in the book. So if you don't want to get into something like that, that's cool. It is called existential kink. So there it is.
It kind of throws the out there. But it's not like inappropriate, so it's not like you're going to read it and there's going to be all this inappropriate things or pornographic or anything, but it is based upon the premise that on some level you are loving what you're doing. And so I do love her approach. It's different. But going back to the and using, and I'm grateful that we are able to kind of flesh out that book a little bit and talk about it. No pun intended there, people. Calm down.
I didn't even get it till you pointed it out.
I'm a dad. I know all the puns. So, but it's this concept of why am I not happy? Well, and then if we pin that why am I not happy to why am I suffering, and then we pin them together and we start to pay attention. And we start to pay attention to the suffering. And I think that's one of the first things that we've got to start doing is really paying attention to the suffering. Why and where and how am I suffering? And how am I creating this? If it's because I'm staying in a relationship because I, on some level, feel like, if this person is not healthy for me, but the need that I have inside of me is to not be alone,
right,
or to feel loved, or to feel like I have somebody that cares about me. I'm seeing this a lot right now in a lot of my younger clients, where there's this belief system that, they should be in a long-term relationship, they should be married, and they should be doing these things. And a lot of it is simply because everybody else is.
right.
And not that they're in love, not that they found a soulmate, not that they found a person that really fits for them, but they found somebody that kind of fits for them.
Right.
So it fulfills the need. So then they stay in the relationship, and then they get through the drama, and they get through the pain, and they get through the discomfort, and they're like, well, why am I unhappy? Well, because you're in a relationship that's not what you want. Mm-hmm. But you are creating the pain by staying in an unhealthy relationship instead of moving on. Mm-hmm. And that's part of what we have to recognize recognize the idea is there is discomfort. Life is about suffering, but suffering is just a choice, and you choose how you're going to experience it. It's just an experience. So when we get into those experiences, and you see some people that tend to cope with it better than other people, and that's intriguing to me. You watch these parents that have this ability to be pushing the cart through Walmart, and they've got the kid throwing a freaking meltdown, and they're like projectile vomiting madness all over the place, and yet the parent can sit there and ride that pony and not be really upset by it, because in their minds they've recognized it's just an experience, and this is just a moment, and it's not going to plague me. It's not going to kill me. It's not going to...
Well, it doesn't define me. It doesn't give me any value. It doesn't hold any purpose or meaning. Like, that's the whole thing. There is no meaning there.
Right.
Whereas we start to attach all this meaning to that experience, and then all of a sudden we're the worst parent in the world, and look at everybody looking at me while I'm just freaking trying to get milk and eggs and go home. Like,
please just leave me alone.
And all of a sudden it just feels like can't even, like a terrible time in history when life was just always hard, right?
Yes.
Like,
yes. I so agree with that, and so it's such this painful mirror to our lives of why we're unhappy, and I think that's where we have to step back from that ledge a little bit, and we have to start to recognize, first of all, the fact that I'm implying that I'm suffering means that I believe there's some level of relief, which means I'm applying values and judgment to things. Well, this will make me happy, this will make me sad, instead of stepping back and experiencing things as they are. Well, isn't that interesting? And here's the thing. So those of you that are listening that have had hurt, pain, trauma in your life, there's a lot of times where you get triggered. And when we get triggered, all of a sudden it throws us, and it can pull you in, it can pull you down, it can pull you into this dark vortex of like madness almost.
Oh, yeah.
And I think every human being listening can relate. And in that moment, here's the thing I want you to understand. In that moment is not the time to try and figure this stuff out. You know what I'm saying? In that moment is not the time to go, am I really suffering?
Right.
Or is this just an experience? This is a time, that's all the work that needs to be done prior to the trigger.
Or after, right?
Or
like
after.
If the trigger is the awareness, like, oh my gosh.
Yes.
Here's this experience.
And after things
me.
have calmed down. Yeah. And then we step back and we start to reason through, we start to deploy coping mechanisms and to deploy coping skills. And where what you'll find is that when these types of things would come along and they'd knock you off the shelf for like a month, now only knock you off the shelf for maybe 20 minutes. And that's a big relief. I know for me, being one of those individuals that have suffered those types of things and been through those types of things and have been, have triggers, etc., like a lot of us out there. Now for me, when I get kicked off the shelf, it's a good 10, 15, 20 minutes off the shelf where, if you talk to me in my 30s, my early 30s, late 20s, it was like a month.
Yeah.
It would take me down for a month, and I would be in that self-loathing, shameful spiral. And so when I'm when we're talking to you about these things, it's because we get it.
Oh yeah, 100%. And then to just continue this idea of, at that point, don't throw the shame blanket on you, right? Like,
that's right.
That is also not the point that you should be. So you get triggered, you're not gonna like, I need to discover all these things and really, but definitely don't cover it with the shame blanket as well. Like, oh my gosh, here I am again. Why can't I get over this? I've done so much work. Da, 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 da. Like, we just berate ourselves over these things where it's, I love how you just said that. Like, oh, isn't that interesting, right? It's just the experience.
Well, I borrowed that from you.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Kate had this great statement where, and I don't know where you got it from, but I'm going to pretend it was you.
Okay. I can't remember either.
But it's that concept. Go ahead.
Just of getting curious about it.
Yeah. Just be curious.
Yeah.
Don't place judgment on it. And I love that you had brought that into my world, because I had I've always been trying to say it, but I didn't have a way to say it. And when you brought that into my world, it was like, yes, that is so good. Isn't this interesting?
Yes.
Isn't this interesting? And when I can apply that to the trigger, when I can apply to getting kicked off the shelf,
yes.
Then it gives me the beat that I need, the pause, the space to kind of go, okay, I'm not going to judge this. It just took me for a drive. I get it. I'm going to wait till I calm down, then I'm going to process it.
Absolutely. And to be as open and honest and loving as I possibly can, whatever it is that you're experiencing, if you can look at it with that, isn't that interesting? And get curious, like, what am I learning about me? What, how long is it going to take me to ride this wave out this time, right? Like, to just kind of surrender. Then also, I think that's another piece, Dean, in the being able to recover from it more quickly. Because the minute that we can surrender to it and just like embrace and love ourselves, for lack of a better word, in spite of it, right? Then it helps that healing process and you move through more quickly.
Yes. I love that. And that is such an important key for us. So I love that. And
in fact, can I just share what my co-star was today?
Your co-star,
yeah, so
yes.
co-star is like an astrological app, and it gives you like a little thought of the day every single day.
Yes.
And
right.
And this is my day at a glance. It says, give yourself permission to be anything, right? So if you've been kicked off the shelf and you're feeling very sad and very lonely or whatever, all those feelings, very, very in your dark place, you have permission to be there today. If that's where you're,
right.
if that's where you're at today, that's okay.
With boundaries.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's...
You say boundaries, Dean, and I thought food. Little
there you go.
Insight into my life, right?
Yeah.
With
and,
only
some people...
3 cookies instead of 15,
yeah,
or whatever
absolutely.
that boundary looks like.
And that's another piece, and we'll follow up on. This will be one of our shorter podcasts. This one, we really want to kick out for some feedback from you as the listener. So I'll cover that in just a minute. But it is about putting boundaries around it. It is making sure that you limit the level or the depth of the darkness that you are in. And so I think sometimes when people hear the term embrace it, they think, oh, just dive in head first and let it take you wherever it takes you.
See how far I can dive
now
into
I'm back
the darkness.
into a full-blown relapse, and I'm 7 sleeves of Oreo cookies in, and it's not that. It's a matter of stepping back. Embracing means do not judge it as good or bad. It's stepping back, doing nothing, taking a beat. Isn't that interesting? Letting the wave wash over you of shame or guilt or whatever it is. Let it wash over you. Do not hang on to it. Do not own it. Let it move past you. And then once it's moved past you, now you step forward and go, okay, now what happened? And you start to process it. And that's where we come in as professionals. That's where we come in as people that can really help you walk through and process those things. And I really want to put a plug out for that. So I do want to come back as we put this podcast out to you. This is one of our inaugural podcasts. We are looking for your help. There's a couple things that we're looking for. First of all is feedback. We want to keep staying in this vein. We want to stay in this topics and in these types of things. We want to go a little bit longer. I'm not sure where that noise is coming from, but we want to go a little bit longer in our podcasts. And then the other thing that we want to do is ask you to help us name our podcast. So we're going to be attaching a survey to the end of this when we post it today. And so we want you to help us name our podcast. So I'm grateful for your time, Kate.
Thanks. I'm grateful for yours as well. Can I leave on an optimistic, hopeful piece?
Always.
So in all that we're talking about, by the way, life isn't just only about suffering, and you are going to experience happiness. And I think that kind of that bigger picture and where the mind twist comes in is that even in that suffering, we can see the beauty and that and just revel in being human, right? Like
Right.
just love the fact that, man, life is so hard right now. This is what it feels like to be a human. So
Yes.
it's okay if you're not always happy.
Well, we will catch up with you on the next podcast. Thanks for listening.
Bye.